Alright, so like most people that never get high, when I think of a high point, I think of a line graph. And specifically, I think of the line graphs that they used to show you when you were a kid that tracked your personal growth against that of your peers. And it was always like this kind of curve that was like this normal kid, and then there's like this dot over here, and that's you. And they track things like your physical growth and your intellect, stuff like that. So height, physical growth, I was always the high point, top of the charts, off the charts. When I was in like 3rd grade, if you looked at me walking amongst the other girls my age, it looked like when you would see like Kobe Bryant walking around Beijing during the Olympics. Kind of like when we were standing next to each other right now. It's okay. But the intellectual curve was always a little bit harder to figure out because your parents never share that with you because they're like, like scared they're going to damage you for life. So when I was in 3rd grade, I was tested for the gifted program, go me. That means that everyone thought that I was really smart and that I should be evaluated by a psychologist so I could get into this fast-track education program that would take me all the way through school. So this psychologist came and took me out of class one day, and they take you into this little room, they ask you all these questions and make you figure out these puzzles, and he's got like a timer, he's like, do it faster, do it faster. And anyway, a couple days later after this test, I was so excited about being gifted, by the way. A couple days later after this test, my mom comes and picks me up from my friend's house in our Toyota Previa, and she's like, guess what, you're not gifted. And I was like, this is like, so there's a group of adults that were like, we think you're special. Oh wait, no, we were wrong. You're not. In fact, with the general population, you are not special. So I went home later that day and I wrote my thoughts on this in my diary, and I'll share what I wrote with you later. But before I share what I wrote with you, I want to do like a flashback to when I was in 1st grade. When I was in 1st grade, I learned some valuable lessons about intellect that kind of pertain to this situation. When I was in 1st grade, there was this kid in my class that was smarter than me. So I already kind of knew that I wasn't like the most special kid in the world. He was like that kid that would raise his hand and be like, excuse me, can I go get some H2O? And the teacher would be like, yeah, sure. And keep teaching. And so all the other kids are paying attention, and I'm just like watching this kid like a hawk, and I'm like, what is H2O? Where is this kid going to get it? And he would just go to the water fountain, and I was like, all right, you got your drink, now what about the H2O? And he would just go and sit back down, and I'd just be like so confused. And I wanted to ask him, but I couldn't. It's like when you're like in middle school and you're on the bus and kids are talking about like blowjobs and stuff, and you don't know what they're talking about, but you can't ask them. Like all you know is like you can't tell them that you don't know, and you just kind of pretend like you do, and it's like a mess. So anyway, back to 1st grade. So in 1st grade, I remember this one day in particular. I come into school, I was wearing a white dress with purple flowers on it, white tights. Come in, take my chair down off my desk, sit down, take out my journal. Writing in my journal was my favorite thing when I was a kid. Most of my stories were about mashed potatoes and how much I loved to eat them. And it's just still true. And I remember thinking, and it's unbelievable almost, but I remember thinking in this moment, P can't go through tights. And then by the time I realized that I was wrong, it was like way too late. And I was just sitting there. And like when you're in 1st grade, it's not like when you're 3, like you can't just own up to this kind of thing. So it's kind of like a wait and see what happens situation at that point. And so this H2O kid sits next to me, and he's like, Claudia, did you just pee your pants? And I was just like what any kid would say. I was like, no. And then he like keeps going. He was like, then why is your chair all wet? And I was just, and then so I was like, the only thing that you can do in that situation, I was just like, my chair's all wet? What? And my teacher comes over at this point, and she leans down, and she's like, Claudia, did you have an accident? And before I can say anything, H2O kid's like all over the situation. He's like, her chair was just all wet when she sat down. And I was like, okay, good, we're going with this. And so she sends me to the nurse, and I get a change of clothes, and I'm at recess later that day thinking like, okay, everything's cool. Like everyone's going with this chair was wet situation, and I don't have to like own up to this at all. And here comes H2O kid up over the playground purposefully toward me. And he was like, Claudia, was your chair on top of your desk when you came into school this morning? And I said, yes, like not seeing where this was going. And he said, well, then it definitely wasn't all wet when you sat down. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so not the smartest kid. This kid is so much smarter than me. He figured out this whole situation. So I went home and I was really upset about it. And I told my mom, she's the only person I would have confided in, and I said, I can't go back to school tomorrow because this kid knows that I peed my pants, that I lied about it, and I'm an idiot. And those are like the 3 worst things you can do when you're in first grade. And everyone's going to make fun of me, and it's going to be the worst thing ever. And so my mom just says to me, she says, Claudia, you made a mistake, but I know who you are, and you know who you are, and it doesn't matter what they say. And I thought, wow, that's great. So going back to when I was in 3rd grade, I wrote when I didn't get into the gifted program, I wrote in my diary that day, I didn't get into gifted, but I don't care if they don't think I gifted. I don't care if they don't think I'm gifted. I can't even talk. I don't care if they don't think I'm gifted, because, and then I didn't write this, but it's because I know who I am, and my mom knows who I am, and, you know, for better or worse. And if I like mashed potatoes, and I like thinking I'm smart, and that's fine, and if I'm not gifted, whatever. It's all part of the end. Claudia!